I am Rachel Morgan, 29 years old, a nurse from Chicago. My life has always been built around care and sacrifice, both in the hospital and at home. I was the older sister who gave up opportunities, the one who carried the family's burdens so my younger sister, Kelly, could shine. The irony is that while I stitched strangers back together every day, my own family bonds were quietly tearing apart. And the final blow came when Kelly humiliated me at her wedding in front of everyone I loved. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from and subscribe if you value standing up for yourself. Growing up, my sister and I were often compared. Kelly was the golden child, beautiful, elegant, always the center of attention. She had a laugh that turned heads and a confidence that made teachers dote on her. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one, the one who kept her grades steady, worked part-time jobs, and stayed home when Mom got sick, so Kelly could go out with her friends. It didn't bother me as much when we were kids. I loved her. I thought that maybe, one day, she'd recognize all the things I did quietly in the background and be grateful, but that day never came. In fact, the older we got, the more the differences between us grew. Kelly dated popular guys, was crowned prom queen, and landed a job in marketing with almost no effort after college. I went through nursing school with loans, sleepless nights, and endless shifts. While she posted photos sipping cocktails in Miami, I was covered in scrubs and exhaustion. Still, I never held it against her, at least, not until her wedding came into the picture. Kelly met Evan 2 years ago. From the beginning, he was smitten with her, just like everyone else. Tall, ambitious, and from a wealthy family, he was the kind of man our parents adored. Mom especially. She would call me just to gush about him. "Rachel, you should see the way Evan looks at Kelly," Mom said once, practically swooning. "He treats her like a princess." I smiled through the phone, though something inside me sank. I wanted to remind her that being treated with basic respect wasn't supposed to be some rare gift, but I kept quiet. When Evan proposed, the wedding planning began instantly. Kelly wanted the grandest wedding Chicago had ever seen. Lavish venue, custom dress, over 300 guests. My parents offered to pay a portion, but Evan's parents took the lead, treating it almost like a business project. The Morgans were merely accessories in Kelly's dream show. I was happy for her at first, truly. But things began to shift when she started assigning wedding roles. "Rachel," she said one afternoon as we sat in her apartment, surrounded by fabric swatches and flower catalogs, "I want you to be my maid of honor." My heart warmed. "Of course, I'd love to." But her smile was thin, rehearsed. "There's just one thing. I don't want you to bring a date. It's a small request, but, we don't want anyone feeling out of place in the pictures." I blinked. "Kelly, you're inviting 300 people. Why would it matter if I bring someone?" She gave a little laugh, the kind she used when she wanted to shut me down. "Oh, come on, Rach, you're single. It's not like you have anyone serious. You can manage a night without dragging someone random along, right?" The words stung more than I let on. She always found ways to remind me of my single status, as if my worth was less because I hadn't married yet. I nodded quietly. "Fine, no date." As the weeks rolled on, the cracks deepened. The bachelorette party she planned excluded me entirely from the decision-making, revolving around expensive clubs and spas I couldn't afford. When I voiced concerns, she brushed me off. "You're being dramatic," she said. "This isn't about you." Her words echoed louder than I wanted to admit. Was it ever about me? The rehearsal dinner brought more of the same. Kelly gave a speech thanking everyone. Her bridesmaids, her future in-laws, her childhood friends. My name was absent. I sat there, smiling stiffly, hands clenching under the tablecloth, pretending I didn't notice. And then came the wedding day. The ceremony was stunning. I won't deny it. The church glittered with flowers, the choir sang beautifully, and Kelly looked radiant in her designer gown. Watching her walk down the aisle was like watching a scene from a movie, but as we moved into the reception, things began to sour. It happened during the toasts. I had prepared something heartfelt, simple, about growing up together, about how I admired her confidence even when we were kids, and how I wished her happiness with Evan. But before I could speak, Kelly took the microphone. "There's something I want to say about my sister," she announced, her voice sugary sweet but her eyes gleaming with something sharper. Guests turned toward me as I smiled nervously, unsure where this was going. She's always been, how do I put it, responsible, maybe a little too responsible. She never really had the fun I did, always stuck in books and scrubs, saving lives or whatever. But hey, someone had to be the boring one so I could shine, right? Laughter rippled through the crowd. My chest tightened. She's like the second mom I never asked for. Always nagging me, always reminding me to do better. I guess in a way, she prepared me to be a wife. So thanks, Rachel, for playing that role all my life. The room chuckled again. To them, it was just light humor. To me, it was years of dismissal and cruelty condensed into a public joke. My throat burned, but I forced a smile. I didn't want to ruin her moment. Later, when I finally stood to give my toast, my hands trembled. I cut it short, barely holding myself together. Applause was polite but subdued. The contrast to Kelly's laughter-filled jab was stark. As I sat down, I caught Evan glancing at me with something I couldn't read. Was it pity? Discomfort? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. Something about Kelly's perfect day wasn't as perfect as she thought. And as the hours passed, that something would come crashing down in ways none of us could have predicted. The reception carried on as if nothing had happened. But inside, I was unraveling. Kelly's words replayed in my head like a cruel echo. The boring one. The second mom I never asked for. She had humiliated me, reduced me to a punchline, and the laughter of nearly 300 guests had sealed the wound. I forced myself to circulate, smiling at relatives who patted my arm sympathetically, though I could tell they didn't truly grasp what had just happened. To them, Kelly was radiant, the bride of the year, and I was just the plain sister in a maid of honor's dress that didn't quite flatter. At the bar, I ordered water, hoping the coolness would settle my racing thoughts. That's when Evan's cousin, Mark, approached. "Tough toast," he said softly, leaning against the counter. I swallowed hard. She meant it as a joke. Mark shook his head. She meant to get a laugh at your expense. Don't let it get to you. I gave a weak smile, but his words only confirmed what I already knew. Kelly had always known exactly where to cut. The night wore on. The dance floor filled with twirling gowns, clinking glasses, and the scent of roses from the endless centerpieces. I stayed near the edges, nursing my water, trying to stay invisible. But invisibility wasn't possible with my family. "Rachel, dance a little," Mom called out, waving her champagne flute. "You're making the pictures look lopsided." Her words stung. Even now, she worried about appearances more than my feelings. I gave a small wave, pretending I'd join later, but I didn't move. Then, I noticed something strange. Evan. He wasn't on the dance floor. He wasn't laughing with friends or holding Kelly in his arms. Instead, I saw him step outside through the glass doors leading to the garden. His phone was pressed to his ear, his shoulders tense. At first, I thought nothing of it. Weddings were chaotic. Maybe he was handling some last-minute issue, but a gut feeling told me otherwise. Half an hour passed before Evan returned. Kelly ran to him, her face flushed with irritation. They exchanged words I couldn't hear, her smile plastered back on only when guests glanced their way. It was subtle, but I caught it, the cracks in her perfect facade. Later, during the cake cutting, I stood beside them, trying to keep my expression neutral as cameras flashed. Kelly giggled, smearing frosting on Evan's cheek for the photos. He played along, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. After the applause died down, I leaned closer. "Are you okay?" I asked him quietly. He stiffened, then forced a grin. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" But his eyes darted toward the garden doors again. Something was wrong. Dinner stretched on. Speeches came and went. Kelly floated from table to table, basking in attention like a queen surveying her court. But Evan seemed distracted. His phone buzzed more than once, and each time he silenced it quickly, sliding it into his pocket as though it burned his hand. I couldn't shake the unease. Maybe it was the nurse in me, always sensing tension and hidden illness. Or maybe it was just the older sister who had spent years watching Kelly manipulate situations. And now, for once, she wasn't the only one holding secrets. At one point, I excused myself to the restroom just to breathe. Inside, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My makeup was still intact, but my eyes told the truth. Red-rimmed, tired, weighed down by humiliation. "You don't deserve this," I whispered to myself. Not tonight. Not ever. When I returned to the ballroom, I noticed a commotion near the head table. Kelly was clutching her bouquet tightly, her knuckles white. Evan wasn't there. Guests were murmuring. "Where did he go?" Someone whispered. "Bathroom, maybe?" Another guessed. But I knew better. I slipped through the crowd and out into the garden. The air was cooler outside, the night sky dotted with stars that offered no comfort. I scanned the shadows until I heard it. A voice low and urgent. "Evans, I told you not to call tonight," he hissed. My heart pounded as I edged closer, careful to stay hidden behind a column draped with ivy. "I don't care if you're upset," he continued. "This isn't the time. Do you understand? She'll notice if I'm gone too long. He wasn't talking about Kelly. He couldn't be. My stomach twisted. "Please," he said, his tone breaking. "Just wait. I'll fix this after the honeymoon. I promise." My breath caught in my throat. He was speaking to someone else. Another woman. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the edge of the stone path. Evan's head jerked up, his eyes scanning the darkness. I pressed myself against the column, praying he wouldn't see me. After a tense moment, he cursed under his breath and ended the call. His footsteps crunched on the gravel as he re-entered the ballroom. I stood frozen, my heart slamming against my ribs. My sister's perfect marriage, the one she flaunted to everyone, the one she used to belittle me, was already cracking apart. I returned inside, forcing myself to look calm. Kelly was still glowing, posing for photos, oblivious. But I couldn't unhear Evan's words. He was hiding something. As I watched them, a strange mix of emotions churned in me. Anger, because Kelly had humiliated me without hesitation. Pity, because she had no idea her dream husband was already tangled in betrayal. And fear, because what I'd overheard had the power to destroy everything before it even began. For the rest of the evening, I kept my distance, but my eyes never left Evan. Every time he laughed too loudly or kissed Kelly's cheek for the cameras, I saw through it. His smile was a mask, and behind it lay secrets Kelly wasn't prepared for. By midnight, the reception wound down. Guests gathered for the sparkler send-off, forming two glowing lines outside the venue. Kelly clutched Evan's hand, her face radiant as they walked between the lights, waving goodbye. Cameras captured every second, every fake smile. I stood at the edge of the crowd, sparkler in hand, my own smile brittle. To everyone else, the night had been magical. To me, it was the beginning of something darker. As Kelly and Evan's limousine pulled away, cheers and applause filled the night air. But all I could hear was Evan's voice in the garden. "I'll fix this after the honeymoon. I promise." The humiliation Kelly had dealt me was nothing compared to the storm waiting for her, and I knew. Hours later, she would face the shock of her life. The morning after the wedding, I woke with a dull ache in my chest. My phone buzzed with notifications from friends and relatives tagging me in pictures from the reception. Smiling faces, champagne glasses raised, sparklers lighting the night sky. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale, but I knew the truth. I had heard Evan's whispered promises to someone else, words he never should have spoken on the night he vowed himself to my sister. Kelly texted me before noon. "Don't forget brunch at the hotel ballroom. Mom insists." Her words carried no acknowledgement of the toast, no apology, not even a joke about it. Just another command, as though nothing had happened. I considered skipping, but guilt tugged at me. I couldn't abandon my family, even if they had abandoned me plenty of times before. Brunch was exactly what I expected. Lavish, crowded, buzzing with chatter. Kelly floated through the room in a white sundress, glowing as if she hadn't stayed up until 2 a.m. dancing. Evan was at her side, his arm around her waist, his smile picture perfect. But every time his phone buzzed, his hand twitched and I noticed. "Rachel," Aunt Diane called, waving me over. "Your speech last night was so heartfelt." Kelly's was memorable too. There was an awkward pause before she added, "You've always been the responsible one. Don't let anyone make you feel less for it." Her words were kind, but they only underscored the humiliation. I muttered thanks and escaped to the coffee station. From across the room, Evan's voice rose. "We'll be leaving for the airport at 2, he told a group of cousins. Bali first, then Santorini. 2 weeks of paradise. Paradise. The word felt bitter. After brunch, I helped Mom pack up decorations, partly to avoid Kelly's endless gushing about her honeymoon plans. "You were quiet last night," Mom said, folding linens. I was tired. Her eyes flicked to mine. "Your sister was joking, you know. Don't be so sensitive." The familiar dismissal hit hard. Sensitive. It was the word Kelly had weaponized since we were children. The excuse Mom always used to absolve her of cruelty. "I'm fine," I said, though I wasn't. By the time I got home, I had convinced myself to let it go. Kelly had humiliated me, yes, but it wasn't worth carrying forever. She would leave for her honeymoon, and life would settle down. Or so I thought. 2 days later, I received the first call. It was from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Is this Rachel?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" Silence, then a sharp inhale. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" The line went dead. I stared at my phone, unsettled. The voice had been young, trembling. My gut told me she was connected to Evan. That night, I tossed and turned. Images of Kelly on a white sand beach, posting selfies with Evan, clashed with the memory of his voice in the garden. "I'll fix this after the honeymoon." Fix what? The next morning, while scrolling through Instagram, I found Kelly's latest post. She stood in front of an infinity pool, palm trees swaying behind her. Evan was in the background, his smile faint, almost distracted. The comments gushed. "Couple goals. You two are perfect." But I zoomed in. His phone was in his hand. Always his phone. Hours later, I got another call from the same number. I answered immediately. "Please don't hang up," I said quickly. There was a pause, then the same trembling voice. "You don't know me, but I think you need to know the truth about Evan." My heart hammered. "Who are you?" Her voice cracked. "My name is Lily, and I'm his girlfriend. Or I thought I was." The room spun. "Girlfriend?" "Yes. We've been together for almost a year. I didn't know about your sister until recently. He told me he was single, then engaged but unhappy. He said he loved me." Her words tumbled out, desperate, pained. I pressed a hand to my forehead. "Do you understand he just married my sister?" A sob broke through the line. "I know, that's why I called. He said he couldn't leave her right now because of money, because her family's wealthy. He promised me he'd end things after the honeymoon." The same words I had heard in the garden. "I'll fix this after the honeymoon." My stomach churned. Kelly, oblivious in Bali, was celebrating a future that was already rotten. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I can't live with the lies anymore," Lily whispered. "I thought you should know. I thought someone should stop him." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Everything clicked into place. Evan's distracted smiles, the late-night phone calls, the way he avoided Kelly when he thought no one was looking. But what was I supposed to do? Kelly had just humiliated me in front of everyone. If I went to her now with this, she'd accuse me of jealousy, of trying to ruin her happiness. Still, I couldn't ignore it. I drafted a message to her, then deleted it. I called, then hung up before the line connected. Finally, I decided to wait. If Lily was telling the truth, Evan's facade wouldn't last 2 weeks. Kelly would see it herself. The next few days were torture. Kelly's posts filled my feed. Beaches, cocktails, sunrises. Evan appeared in nearly all of them, but always slightly apart, his smile thin, his phone in hand. On the 5th day, Kelly called me unexpectedly. "Rachel, you won't believe how gorgeous it is here, but Evan's been acting weird. He disappears for calls, says it's work, but I don't know," I bit my lip. "Maybe you should ask him directly." "I did," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. He got defensive. Said I was being paranoid. "But Rachel—" Her voice dropped. I found messages on his phone. From someone named Lily, my pulse quickened. "What did they say?" "Just, I miss you. I love you." Things like that. He swore it's nothing, but She trailed off. In that moment, I realized Kelly's perfect world was already crumbling, and there was nothing I needed to do but wait. 2 days later, the news broke. Kelly called me, sobbing so hard I could barely make out her words. "He left," she choked out. "Evan left the resort. He said he needed space. And then I got a message from Lily. She sent me pictures. Rachel, he was with her last week. While we were here." I closed my eyes, my heart aching despite everything she'd done to me. My little sister, the one who had laughed at my expense, was now broken. Hours later, she would face the worst shock of her life. Her dream marriage had been nothing but a lie. Kelly's voice on the phone was shredded with disbelief. "He was with her, Rachel, with her. While we were supposed to be celebrating our honeymoon. How could he?" I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. "Are you sure, Kelly? She sent me photos," she sobbed. Him holding her, kissing her, in the same stupid shirt he wore on our second day here. He didn't even bother hiding it. I sat down heavily on my bed. "Where is he now?" "He packed his things and left the resort. Said he needed time to figure himself out." Can you believe that? "Figure himself out, while I'm left here like a fool." Her voice cracked into raw, wounded anger. By evening, Kelly had posted nothing on social media, which for her was the loudest sign that something was wrong. She went silent. No more filtered sunsets or perfect cocktails. I kept my phone close, waiting for her updates. But mostly what came were desperate texts. What if people find out? "Do you think Lily will tell others?" "Rachel, I can't let anyone know." "Not yet." It struck me how quickly her panic turned to image control. Even in heartbreak, she worried about appearances. But beneath that shallow concern, I could feel her unraveling. 2 days later, she called me again, her voice hoarse from crying. "He maxed out my credit card. Rachel, thousands. He said he'd pay me back, but he's gone. He left me here with the bill." My stomach twisted. "Kelly, listen to me. You need to cancel the cards. Call the bank. Report them stolen if you have to." "I already did," she whispered. "But the hotel knows. They saw him leave with his bags. They know I'm alone." Her sobbing turned into muffled, frantic words. "I'm humiliated. Everyone will know my marriage was a joke after just a week." For the first time, I felt an ache of pity for her. She had humiliated me publicly, yes. She had laughed while doing it. But now she was the one being dragged through the mud, and it wasn't by my hand. It was by the man she had chosen. When she came back from Bali, she didn't call anyone. She drove straight from the airport to my apartment, suitcase in tow, her eyes swollen and bloodshot. The sight of her standing at my door, stripped of all her usual perfection, left me stunned. "Can I stay here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I hesitated, the sting of the wedding still fresh, but I couldn't slam the door on my sister, no matter how deep the wounds ran. I stepped aside. "Come in." She collapsed onto my couch and cried for hours. Words poured out between sobs. Evan's lies, his manipulation, the way he called Lily during their honeymoon nights. "I should have known," she said finally, wiping her face with trembling hands. "You warned me once, didn't you? You said he seemed too slick, and I laughed at you." I nodded slowly. "You didn't want to hear it." "I didn't," she admitted, "because it was easier to believe the fairy tale. I thought, if I looked perfect, had the perfect husband, maybe I'd finally feel like enough." The confession shocked me. Beneath her arrogance and cruelty had been desperation. She hadn't been strong. She had been hiding behind appearances. For days, she stayed with me, barely leaving the couch. She ignored calls, refused to see friends, and hid from the world that had once adored her. But word spreads fast. By the end of the week, whispers circulated in our family group chats. Cousins texted me, asking if it was true that Evan had left Kelly. I didn't reply. It wasn't my story to confirm, even if part of me wanted everyone to know. One evening, she looked at me across the living room, her face pale. "Do you hate me, Rachel?" I froze. "Why would you ask that?" "Because of what I said at the wedding. Because I made you small in front of everyone. I thought it would make me look bigger, but now I see." Her voice broke. "It just made me cruel." I stared at her, caught between bitterness and compassion. "You hurt me, Kelly, more than I can explain. But hating you won't undo anything. She bowed her head, tears dripping onto her hands. I'm sorry. I've never said that to you before, have I? No, I said softly. You haven't. A week later, she got a call from Evan. I overheard part of it from the kitchen. Kelly, please, you have to understand. His voice crackled through the speaker. Lily meant nothing. You're my wife. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. Her laugh was bitter, hollow. Fix this? You cheated on our honeymoon. You drained my accounts. You left me alone in a foreign country. There's nothing to fix. You're being dramatic, he snapped. You knew what you were getting into? Her voice hardened. No, Evan, I didn't, but now I do. She ended the call, her hands trembling, and for the first time since the wedding, I saw something in her eyes besides grief. Strength. The following weekend, our parents invited us for dinner. Kelly insisted I come with her. She couldn't face them alone. At the table, Mom clucked her tongue. It's just a rough patch. Every marriage has them. Maybe you need to be more patient. Kelly slammed her fork down. He cheated on me during our honeymoon, Mom. He stole from me. Patience won't fix that. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Marriage is complicated. Maybe give it some time. No! Kelly's voice shook the chandelier. I'm done giving men time to break me down. I'm done pretending everything is fine. Silence fell, thick and heavy. For once, Kelly wasn't performing. She was telling the truth, raw and unpolished. Later that night, as we walked out to the car, she whispered, They'll never understand, will they? Maybe not, I said. But you don't need their understanding to survive this. She looked at me, her eyes glistening. I need yours, though. Something shifted between us in that moment. For years, we had been rivals in our parents' silent competition. Who looked better, who achieved more, who shined brightest. But Evan's betrayal had shattered her illusions, and for the first time, she reached for me not as competition, but as a sister, and I found myself reaching back. The collapse of her marriage was brutal, humiliating, and public. But it was also the moment Kelly stopped hiding behind perfection. And as much as it shocked me to admit it, maybe it was also the moment our relationship began to heal. The morning after that family dinner, Kelly sat at my kitchen table, staring at her untouched coffee. She looked exhausted, her once flawless hair now pulled into a messy bun, her face bare of makeup. For a moment, I didn't see the older sister who had always walked with her head high. I saw a broken woman, unsure of who she was without the illusion of perfection. Do you think people will forgive me? She whispered. For what? I asked, pouring myself some tea. For being blind, for letting him use me, for humiliating everyone. Her fingers trembled as they clutched the mug. I can't stop thinking about how smug Lily must feel right now. She's not the one who matters, I said firmly. You need to stop worrying about what people think. You have to think about yourself. She gave a bitter laugh. You make it sound easy. The calls started coming that week. Aunt Marcy phoned to say she had heard things from a friend who saw Evan in the city with Lily. Cousins texted, asking if the marriage was already over. Some messages were sympathetic, but most were dripping with curiosity, like vultures circling fresh prey. Kelly ignored them all, retreating further into herself. One evening, she sat on my couch, scrolling endlessly through her phone until she suddenly hurled it across the room. I can't take it anymore, she cried. Every time I open social media, there he is. Pictures, tags, stories. He's flaunting her like I never existed. I picked up the phone for her. The screen showed Evan and Lily at a rooftop bar, smiling like they were the happiest couple in the world. My chest burned with anger on Kelly's behalf. Then stop looking, I said gently, handing it back. Block him. Block her. Don't let them keep hurting you. She shook her head. If I block them, I'll miss something. What if they get engaged next month? What if she wears my dress? I need to know. Her words sent a chill through me. The humiliation hadn't just wounded her pride. It had consumed her. Days bled into weeks, and Kelly moved through them like a shadow. She barely ate. She barely slept. I would find her awake at 2 a.m, sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. One night, I tried to break through. Kelly, you have to stop living like this, I said softly, sitting beside her on the couch. He doesn't deserve your energy. She looked at me, her eyes hollow. But if I stop thinking about him, then I have to think about me. and I don't know who I am anymore. I didn't know what to say. For so long, her identity had been tied to her image, her beauty, her marriage, her social standing. Now, stripped of those things, she was lost. Then came the letter. It arrived on a gray Thursday afternoon, slid under my apartment door. Kelly picked it up, her hands trembling as she recognized Evan's handwriting. "Rachel," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He wrote to me." I stood frozen as she tore it open. The letter was short, filled with excuses. He wrote about needing space, about feeling trapped, about finding himself with Lily. He even had the audacity to say he hoped Kelly could remain friends with both of them. Someday. Her hands shook as she read aloud. "Friends? He wants to be friends? After everything?" Her voice rose into a scream as she crumpled the paper and threw it against the wall. Then she collapsed, sobbing into her hands. I knelt beside her, wrapping my arms around her shaking body. "Let him go, Kelly," I whispered. "Please, let him go." But letting go wasn't easy. The aftermath wasn't just emotional, it was practical. Kelly had joint accounts with Evan. She had bills in both their names. The honeymoon charges, the apartment rent, the wedding loans. They all came crashing down on her shoulders. I watched her sit with a financial advisor, her face pale as numbers piled up. "You're telling me I'm tens of thousands in debt," she muttered. The advisor nodded grimly. "Unless he pays his share." "But he won't," I said bitterly. "He's already gone." Kelly buried her face in her hands. "I've ruined my life." "No," I said firmly. "He ruined it. But you can rebuild, piece by piece. And I'll help you." Her eyes met mine, brimming with tears. For the first time, she whispered, "Thank you." The weeks turned into a strange routine. I went to work each day, came home to find Kelly either crying, sleeping, or numbly scrolling her phone. Sometimes she would manage a smile. Sometimes she would laugh at a memory we shared. But most days she was drowning, and I could only throw her a rope she wasn't ready to grab. Then one night, I came home to find her gone. Her suitcase was missing. Her phone was gone. My heart pounded as I searched the apartment, calling her name. Then I saw it, a note on the table. "Rachel, don't worry. I just need to clear my head. I'm staying at a hotel for a few nights. Please don't try to stop me. Love, Kelly." I stared at the words, my stomach twisting with dread. Something about the shaky handwriting, the hurried tone didn't feel right. I picked up my phone and called her immediately. Straight to voicemail. Hours passed with no answer. I sat awake all night, pacing the apartment, praying she was safe. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Mom, something I hadn't done in months. She left, I explained quickly. She said she's at a hotel, but she won't answer her phone. "I'm worried." Mom's voice wavered on the other end. "Oh, Rachel, I didn't want to tell you, but she called me last night. She sounded broken. She said she couldn't live with the shame." My blood ran cold. "Shame? She said that?" "Yes," Mom whispered. I thought maybe she was just being dramatic. But now I'm not sure. Panic surged through me. I'm going to find her. I called every hotel in the area, describing Kelly, begging for information. Finally, at a small inn on the edge of town, the receptionist confirmed she had checked in. "She hasn't come down since yesterday evening," the woman said. "Do you want me to knock on her door?" "Yes," I said quickly. "Please." Minutes later, the receptionist returned to the phone, her voice uneasy. "She's not answering. Do you want us to send someone in?" My knees nearly buckled. "Yes, please. Now." The silence on the other end felt like hours. Then the woman's voice came back, shaken. "She's here. She's alive, but she's not well. You should come quickly." I grabbed my keys, my heart hammering, and drove faster than I ever had in my life. The aftermath of her humiliation wasn't just about Evan or the wedding anymore. It was about survival, and I realized, as the road blurred beneath my tires, that if I didn't act now, I could lose my sister forever. When I burst into the small inn, the receptionist recognized me immediately. She looked pale, her voice hushed as she pointed me down the hall. "Room 214. We already called a medic to check on her. She's shaken, but She's still here. I rushed upstairs, my hands trembling as I pushed open the door. The sight that greeted me made my chest ache. Kelly sat on the bed, still in her clothes from the night before. The curtains were drawn, the air stale with the scent of wine and despair. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes swollen. In front of her on the nightstand sat an open bottle of sleeping pills, half empty. Kelly. I gasped, running to her side. She looked up slowly, her expression dazed. Don't worry. I didn't take them all, I just thought about it. I gripped her shoulders. You scared me half to death. Do you have any idea what you're doing to yourself? Her lips trembled. I just wanted it all to stop. The whispers, the shame, him, her, all of it. I wanted to disappear. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight as she sobbed into my chest. You don't get to disappear. Not like this. You're my sister, Kelly. You don't get to leave me behind. The medic arrived minutes later, checking her vitals and asking gentle questions. Kelly answered quietly, admitting she hadn't eaten properly in days. The medic suggested she be taken in for observation, but Kelly shook her head fiercely. No hospitals, she whispered. I don't want more people talking about me. I promised I would watch her myself, that I wouldn't let her out of my sight. Reluctantly, the medic agreed but left me with stern warnings about keeping her safe. When we were alone again, I knelt in front of her. Kelly, you hit rock bottom today, but that doesn't mean it's the end. It means you can only go up from here. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. But what's left for me to climb toward? Yourself, I said simply. The real you. Not Evan's wife. Not Lily's rival. Not the perfect daughter. Just Kelly. I checked her out of the hotel and drove her back to my apartment. She sat silently in the passenger seat, staring out the window. I could almost hear the storm raging in her head, but she didn't speak. When we got home, I made her soup, coaxing her to eat a few spoonfuls. Then I sat beside her on the couch and said what I had been holding back for weeks. You need help, Kelly. Real help. Therapy. Support groups. Something beyond me. I can't be everything for you. She looked at me with fear in her eyes. Do you think I'm crazy? No, I said softly. I think you're broken right now, and that's okay. But broken things can be mended. Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. That was the first step. Over the next few days, I stayed close, keeping her busy with small routines. We went for short walks. We watched movies late into the night. I encouraged her to journal, to pour her thoughts onto paper instead of letting them fester inside. But her healing was far from linear. Some mornings, I'd wake to find her staring blankly at the ceiling, whispering Evan's name like a curse. Other days, she'd lash out at me, accusing me of not understanding what it felt like to be betrayed so publicly. I took it all, reminding myself it wasn't truly me she was angry at. It was him. It was her. It was everything she had built her life on crashing down. The turning point came one afternoon when I found her sitting on the balcony, staring at the city below. For a split second, my heart stopped. I thought she might jump. But she turned as I approached, her face calmer than I had seen in weeks. You know what hurts the most? She asked quietly. I sat beside her, bracing myself. What? That I thought I was special. That I thought our wedding meant something. And now looking back, I see all the signs. He never really looked at me, not the way he looked at her. She gave a bitter laugh. It was always her. I reached for her hand. Maybe it was, but that says nothing about you. It says everything about him. Her eyes flicked to mine. Then why do I feel like I'm the one who failed? Because he made you believe that, I said firmly. But it's a lie. You didn't fail. He did. She exhaled slowly, like a weight had been released. That night, she agreed to call a therapist. It wasn't easy. Her pride fought against it. But deep down, she knew she couldn't carry this alone. The first session was rough. I waited outside the office, pacing like an anxious parent. When she emerged, her face was streaked with tears, but there was a spark in her eyes I hadn't seen in months. She said, I've been living my whole life for other people's approval, Kelly whispered as we walked to the car, and I don't even know what I want for myself. I squeezed her hand. Then maybe it's time you find out. Still, healing didn't erase the anger. One evening, after her third therapy session, Kelly slammed her notebook shut. I want them to pay, she hissed. Evan and Lily, they humiliated me. They destroyed everything. Why do they get to walk around happy while I'm here scraping pieces of myself off the floor? Her voice trembled with rage. It's not fair. I looked at her, torn. Revenge won't heal you, Kelly. It'll keep you tied to them forever. She leaned forward, eyes blazing. But maybe justice will. The words sent a chill through me. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up the crumpled letter from Evan and smoothed it out on the table. He thinks he can just move on. He thinks there are no consequences. But he's wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the sound of Kelly pacing in the living room, her bare feet against the floor. Her grief had transformed into something darker, anger, determination. And as much as I wanted her to move on peacefully, I knew my sister well enough to realize one thing. She wasn't going to let this end quietly. Rock bottom hadn't destroyed her. It had given her a new purpose, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go. I knew Kelly's mind was working overtime when she started getting up before sunrise. She would sit at the kitchen table with her coffee, a notebook open, scribbling furiously. When I asked what she was doing, she would snap the cover shut and say, "Nothing you need to worry about." But I was worried. One morning, I slid into the chair across from her and folded my arms. "Kelly, you've been scribbling for days. You don't eat properly. You barely sleep. And every time I ask, you dodge. What's going on?" She hesitated, her pen hovering above the page. Then, with a slow exhale, she turned the notebook toward me. It was filled with names, dates, and connections. Evan's business partners, Lily's friends from college, the caterer who had worked their wedding, the hotel where Evan often booked business trips. My stomach tightened. "You're collecting information?" Her eyes met mine, sharp with focus I hadn't seen in months. "I'm building a map of how they operate, where they go, who they trust. If they want to play games with my life, then fine, I'll play too. But this time I win." At first, I thought she was joking, or maybe trying to regain control by creating a fantasy of power. But as days turned into weeks, her plan became more structured. She researched Evan's firm, combing through public records and financial filings. She highlighted irregularities in expense reports, late tax payments, and questionable client dealings. Then she shifted her attention to Lily. Through mutual acquaintances, she pieced together Lily's career moves, tracking every promotion, every glowing article in the local press. She noticed a pattern. Every step forward for Lily coincided with her attaching herself to powerful men. "She's a leech," Kelly muttered, pointing to the chart she had drawn. "Every man she's been with has lost something. Money, reputation, freedom. Evan will be no different." I rubbed my temples. "Kelly, this looks dangerous. You're not an investigator. You're not a lawyer. You can't just watch me," she cut in sharply. "They took everything from me. If I don't fight back, what's left of me?" Her obsession grew, but so did her clarity. She tracked down an old college friend of Evan's, a man named Marcus, who had once invested in his startup. Marcus, as it turned out, had lost a significant amount of money when Evan backed out of a deal. Kelly arranged a meeting with him at a small cafe. I insisted on coming along, half afraid she'd spiral. Marcus was tall, weary-looking, with lines of bitterness carved into his face. As soon as Kelly mentioned Evan's name, his expression darkened. "That bastard still owes me 50 grand, Marcus said, his voice low. "Said it was a risk we both had to take. Then he walks away with his pockets full, and I'm left with debt collectors breathing down my neck." Kelly leaned forward, her eyes steady. "Would you be willing to share everything you know about him? The real Evan? Because I'm not just one of his old business partners. I'm the ex-wife he humiliated and left behind." Marcus's face softened. He nodded slowly. "I've been waiting years for someone to ask." Piece by piece, Kelly started to assemble a case, not just against Evan, but against the image he and Lily had built. I watched her pour hours into cross-referencing documents, reaching out discreetly to people who had also been burned by them. Some refused to talk. Others surprisingly opened up. "I don't understand," I admitted one night as we sat surrounded by papers. What's the endgame? Are you planning to sue? Go public? Expose them somehow? She gave me a cold, thin smile. All of the above. Her first strike was subtle. A local journalist received an anonymous tip about Evan's firm mishandling client funds. Kelly had carefully crafted the letter, attaching copies of documents Marcus had provided. Within days, whispers spread through the business community. Then came Lily. Kelly leaked screenshots of Lily's flirtatious messages to one of her clients. Screenshots she had obtained through a chain of loose-tongued friends. The screenshots went viral in the small professional circles Lily moved in, tarnishing her carefully polished image. The fallout was immediate. Evan's firm faced an internal review. Lily's company suspended her from a major campaign, and Kelly, she watched it all unfold with an eerie calm. "Feels good, doesn't it?" she asked one evening, sipping wine with a steadiness that unnerved me. I hesitated. "Does it? Or are you just digging yourself deeper into their world?" Her smile faded. "This isn't about them anymore. It's about me proving I'm not powerless." But revenge, I realized, wasn't feeding her soul. It was consuming it. Late one night, I found her crying quietly at the kitchen table. The newspaper article about Evan's firm lay open in front of her. "They called me a source," she whispered, her voice raw. "But they don't know the whole story. They don't know how much he broke me. They'll never know." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Kelly, you don't have to keep proving it to the world. You just have to live your life. Isn't that the best revenge?" She shook her head fiercely. "Not yet. They still walk free. They still smile in public. Until they feel the humiliation I felt. It's not enough." The next phase of her plan was darker. She began digging into Evan's personal life, his late-night habits, the bars he frequented, the colleagues he flirted with when Lily wasn't around. She talked about setting him up, creating a scandal so big he couldn't crawl out of it. That's when I finally snapped. "Kelly, stop," I shouted, slamming her notebook shut. "You're not just seeking justice anymore, you're playing God. Where does it end? What happens when you've destroyed them? Do you think you'll suddenly wake up happy?" Her face twisted with frustration. "You don't understand. This isn't just about happiness. It's about balance. About making sure they can't hurt anyone else the way they hurt me." I stared at her, my chest aching. "And what about you? You're still hurting yourself. You think you're winning, but you're still living in their shadow." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then she looked away, tears streaking her cheeks. Maybe I don't know how to stop. That night, I realized something terrifying. Kelly's plan wasn't just about exposing Evan and Lily. It was about tethering herself to them forever, even if it meant burning down everything in the process. And while part of me wanted to cheer her on, another part feared what she was. Becoming revenge had given her purpose, but it was a dangerous purpose, one that might destroy her as much as it destroyed them. I knew something was brewing the morning. Kelly showed up in my room wearing a crisp black blazer I hadn't seen her wear in years. She had her hair pulled back, her makeup sharp, her eyes burning with a purpose I hadn't recognized since before the wedding. "Today's the day," she said simply, slipping a folder into her bag. My stomach dropped. "What day?" "The day Evan and Lily finally faced me." She refused to explain further, but I knew better than to push too hard. Instead, I followed her, fear gnawing at my chest as she drove across town. She parked outside a downtown hotel, one of the venues Evan's firm often used for client conferences. "Kelly," I whispered, clutching her arm before she could step out. "What are you doing?" "This is reckless." Her eyes locked on mine, calm but cold. "You can leave if you want. But I need to do this. I need to look them in the eye and remind them who they tried to erase." With that, she straightened her blazer and walked through the glass doors. Inside, the hotel lobby buzzed with polished professionals. Evan's firm was hosting an investor luncheon, the kind of event where every handshake mattered. Kelly moved like she belonged there, her heels clicking across the marble floor with unflinching confidence. I trailed behind, my pulse racing, praying we wouldn't get thrown out. We found them in the main ballroom. Evan at the center of a cluster of men in tailored suits, Lily at his side in a shimmering dress that screamed money and attention. Kelly didn't hesitate. She strode right up to them. "Hello, Evan. Hello, Lily." The words sliced through the chatter like a blade. Heads turned. Evan stiffened, his smile faltering. Lily's eyes went wide before she quickly masked it with a laugh. "Well, if it isn't Kelly," Lily drawled, her voice carrying enough for the nearby crowd to hear. "How surprising." Evan forced a polite smile. "Kelly, this isn't really the time." But Kelly cut him off. "Oh, I think it's the perfect time." "Don't you?" The people around them shifted uneasily, sensing the tension. Kelly reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder. "These," she announced, "are records of Evan's little financial tricks, missing funds, misreported expenses, things your investors might find concerning." A ripple of whispers shot through the crowd. Evan's face turned crimson. "You don't know what you're talking about," he hissed, stepping closer to her. Kelly didn't flinch. "I know enough. Enough to ruin you if I want to." Lily tried to regain control, flashing her rehearsed smile. "This is pathetic, Kelly. Crashing an event just to cry about the past. Move on. Evan chose me. That's the end of it." But Kelly's laugh rang out sharp and cold. "Oh, Lily. Always so sure the world revolves around you. But tell me, do Evan's clients know about your little late-night messages to Robert James? Or the fact that you've been more than just friendly with half the men you work with?" The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes snapped to Lily. Evan's head jerked toward her, confusion etched into his face. "What is she talking about?" he demanded. Lily's smile faltered. "She's lying." Kelly pulled out her phone, tapped a screen, and held it up. Clear enough for anyone nearby to see were screenshots of Lily's flirty messages, the kind that left no room for misinterpretation. Gasps filled the air. Evan's jaw clenched as he snatched the phone from Kelly's hand, scanning the messages. His face drained of color. "You told me he was just a client," he muttered, his voice low but venomous. "Evan, listen," Lily started, reaching for him, but he shoved her hand away. The scene spiraled. Investors whispered. Staff looked uncomfortable, and Evan's carefully crafted image cracked right there in front of everyone. Kelly leaned in, her voice low but firm. "You two thought you could humiliate me, thought you could erase me, but I am still here, and now, so is the truth." Evan's hands shook as he shoved the folder back at her. "You think this proves anything? You think anyone will believe you over me?" Kelly's lips curved into a thin smile. "They already do, because I don't need to prove who you are. You're proving it yourself." Security eventually stepped in, trying to usher Kelly out, but the damage had been done. Whispers followed Evan as his investors pulled him aside. Lily trailed behind, her mask slipping as panic replaced her smug confidence. Kelly walked out of that ballroom taller than I had seen her in months. Her steps were steady, her head high, while the world they had built for themselves crumbled in the eyes of their peers. Outside, I grabbed her arm. "What was that, Kelly? Do you realize you might have just burned every bridge?" She shook me off, her eyes shining with something between triumph and exhaustion. "Let it burn. They wanted to make me invisible. I made sure everyone saw me." That night, news spread quickly. By the next morning, gossip blogs and business columns hinted at scandal in Evan's firm. Investors pulled back. Lily's company suspended her pending an internal review. I found Kelly at the kitchen table again, but this time, there were no scribbles, no frantic planning. Just her, sipping tea, her hands finally steady. "You should be proud," I told her quietly. She didn't smile. "It's not pride I feel. It's relief. For the first time since that wedding, I can breathe." I studied her, wondering if this was truly the end, or if there was still another storm waiting. Because one thing was certain. Evan and Lily wouldn't take this lying down, and I wasn't sure if Kelly was ready for what would come next. The storm hit faster than I expected. By the next morning, Kelly's phone was buzzing nonstop. Some were sympathetic messages from colleagues who had heard whispers about the confrontation. Others were cruel texts from numbers we didn't recognize, accusing her of being bitter, jealous, or unhinged. Evan wasted no time launching his counterattack. By noon, a statement appeared online under his firm's letterhead. It painted Kelly as a disgruntled ex who had stalked him and his new wife, crashing a professional event in an attempt to sabotage his career. It accused her of forging documents and spreading malicious rumors. I shoved the phone toward Kelly when I saw it. You have to respond to this. He's making you look like a liar. But she stayed calm, too calm. Let him talk. The louder he screams, the more desperate he looks. Still, I could see the cracks forming. Kelly hadn't slept much since the confrontation. She paced the house, her coffee mug always full, her eyes darting to her phone whenever it buzzed. That afternoon, Lily called me. Not Kelly, me. Sarah, Lily said, her voice sugary but brittle. You need to talk to your sister. She's ruining lives. She embarrassed herself, embarrassed us. And for what? Old heartbreak? Tell her to back off before she destroys everything. I nearly laughed. She destroys everything? Lily, you're the one who destroyed her. On your wedding day. And don't think I don't know about those messages Kelly showed. A pause. Then Lily's tone sharpened. Those were private. Twisted out of context. She's unstable, Sarah. You know that. Don't let her drag you down with her. I hung up without another word. The real blow came 2 days later. Kelly received a thick envelope from Evan's attorney. Inside was a cease and desist letter, accusing her of harassment, defamation, and unauthorized surveillance. Kelly read it aloud, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. They're threatening legal action if I don't retract everything publicly. I felt my chest tighten. What are you going to do? She set the papers down carefully. Fight. I'm not afraid of him anymore. The days that followed blurred into chaos. Evan's connections in the business world closed ranks. News outlets parroted his side of the story. Online forums filled with strangers debating whether Kelly was a scorned ex or a whistleblower. Some called her brave. Others mocked her mercilessly. I watched as she endured it all with a strange resilience. But at night, when the house was quiet, I heard her muffled sobs through the walls. One evening, I sat beside her on the couch, placing a blanket over her shoulders. You don't have to keep doing this alone, Kelly. Let me help. Let's find a lawyer, someone who can stand with you. Her eyes, red-rimmed but determined, met mine. I already did. She slid a business card across the table. Her name's Rebecca Stone. She specializes in corporate misconduct cases. If Evan wants a war, he'll get one. The first meeting with Rebecca felt like stepping into a battlefield strategy session. Rebecca was sharp, efficient, and completely unshaken by the mountain of threats Evan had unleashed. Evan is banking on intimidation, she explained. Classic tactic. But if what you showed me is authentic, financial records, screenshots, then he's the one who should be scared. The law doesn't look kindly on fraud or infidelity when it touches company money. Kelly leaned forward. So what's our move? Rebecca's lips curved into a small smile. We let him hang himself. Slowly, but Evan wasn't done. The very next day, someone leaked old photos of Kelly. Harmless, silly snapshots from college parties, but twisted online into proof of her being unstable. She's desperate for attention, one comment read. That's why Evan left her for someone better. I wanted to scream. This is disgusting. They're dragging your name through the mud. Kelly's hands shook as she scrolled, but her voice stayed firm. They can smear me all they want. Truth has a way of surfacing. Still, I could see the toll it was taking. The strong, fiery Kelly I knew was bending under the weight of their campaign. Then came the night everything cracked. We were sitting at the table when there was a loud knock at the door. Kelly froze. I opened it to find Evan himself standing there, his tie loosened, his face pale with fury. Where is she? He barked, trying to push past me. Kelly appeared in the doorway behind me, her voice like ice. What do you want, Evan? His eyes blazed. You think you can ruin me? You think people will believe your lies? I made you who you are. Without me, you're nothing. I stepped between them. Enough, get out. But Kelly didn't back down. She walked right up to him, her chin high. No, Evan, without you, I'm free. And soon, everyone will see you for what you are. For a moment, he looked like he might strike her. But then he sneered, spat on the floor, and stormed off into the night. The silence afterward was heavy, suffocating. I turned to Kelly, my heart pounding. He's unhinged. We need to call someone. The police, maybe. But Kelly shook her head. No, we stick to the plan. His temper is his weakness. He'll undo himself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the look in Evan's eyes. the same mix of arrogance and desperation that had once broken my sister apart. But now, I realized, it was consuming him instead. Over the next week, Rebecca worked quietly, gathering evidence, building a case. Kelly held on, barely, her strength fueled more by defiance than peace. But then came the shock we hadn't expected. Rebecca called one evening, her voice tight with urgency. "Kelly, you need to sit down." We gathered around the phone as she spoke. "We've uncovered something big. Evan hasn't just been misusing funds. He's been funneling money into offshore accounts. Millions. And Lily knew about it." My jaw dropped. "What does that mean?" Rebecca's voice was firm. "It means they're both in far deeper trouble than they realize. And it means the end is coming, faster than either of them can prepare for." I looked at Kelly then. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't trembling. She wasn't pacing. She was still, her lips curved into a faint, almost disbelieving smile. "Then let it come," she whispered. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, like the calm before a storm. Kelly and I sat in Rebecca Stone's office, the thick file of evidence spread across the polished wooden table between us. Bank statements, encrypted emails, offshore transfers, all the pieces that painted Evan not as the polished golden boy he presented to the world, but as a fraud. And Lily, my sister, wasn't just complicit. She had signed off on several transactions. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes steady on Kelly. "Once this goes public, there's no going back. The press, the authorities, even their friends, they'll turn on them. Are you ready for that?" Kelly inhaled slowly, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "I've been ready since the night she humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. I just didn't know the truth would turn out this big." The next morning, the news broke. A major financial site ran the headline, "Evan Brooks under investigation for fraud. Wife linked to offshore accounts." The story spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was trending across social media. Comment sections that had once mocked Kelly now turned into a flood of outrage against Evan and Lily. By noon, their faces were plastered on every news channel. Anchors dissected every detail of their perfect wedding now tainted by scandal. Video clips of Lily beaming in her gown played side by side with graphics of wire transfers and legal documents. "They deserve each other," Kelly muttered as we watched from the couch. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to laugh, though there was no joy in it, only release. The fallout was immediate. Evan's law firm issued a statement suspending him indefinitely, pending the investigation. His polished bio vanished from their website overnight. Clients fled in droves. As for Lily, her dream job in event planning evaporated in less than 24 hours. The company she had just joined cut ties to avoid association with the scandal. Her Instagram, once a curated gallery of champagne glasses and designer gowns, was now a wasteland of angry comments and unfollows. I scrolled through her page, stunned. "She's losing everything, Kelly." Kelly didn't look up from her coffee. "Good. Maybe now she'll understand what it feels like." But the real blow came 2 days later, when federal investigators showed up at Evan and Lily's new condo. Photos of the raid made the front page of every paper in town. Agents carrying boxes of documents, computers, even jewelry that had been purchased with stolen funds. I couldn't help it. I thought back to the smug expression Lily wore as she stood in her wedding gown, mocking Kelly in front of everyone. That arrogance had shattered in less than a week. Late one night, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sarah." The voice was cracked, almost unrecognizable. "It was Lily. What do you want?" I asked flatly. Her words came out in a rush. "I made a mistake. I didn't know it would go this far. Please, you have to tell Kelly I'm sorry. She won, okay? Just make it stop." I closed my eyes, feeling both fury and pity twist inside me. "You humiliated her in front of the world, Lily. And now the world is watching you fall. Don't call me again." I hung up before she could respond. The trial came months later, but by then the damage was already done. Evan was indicted on multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. Lily faced charges too, not as severe, but enough to stain her record permanently. Kelly testified with unwavering strength. I sat in the gallery, watching as she recounted years of manipulation, betrayal, and lies. She wasn't trembling anymore. She was composed, steady, and finally free. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Evan was sentenced to years in prison. Lily avoided jail through a plea deal, but the humiliation would follow her forever. Afterward, Kelly and I walked out of the courthouse together, the autumn air crisp and sharp. Reporters swarmed us, microphones flashing, voices shouting questions. How does it feel to finally have justice? One shouted. Kelly paused, her hand tightening on mine. Then she looked straight at the cameras. It feels like freedom. For years, I let people walk over me, lie to me, betray me, humiliate me. But not anymore. This is the end of their story, and the beginning of mine. The cameras clicked furiously as we walked past them. But for once, Kelly didn't flinch. She was radiant. Weeks later, we sat together in her small apartment sipping tea. The chaos had quieted. Evan was behind bars. Lily had disappeared from public life. Kelly had started volunteering at a local shelter, channeling her pain into something meaningful. I never thought I'd survive this, she admitted softly, staring into her mug. But you know what? I'm glad it happened, I raised an eyebrow. Glad? She nodded. Because it forced me to find out who I really am without them. I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for, and I'll never let anyone take that from me again. That night, as I watched Kelly laugh for the first time in months, really laugh, I realized something. Justice hadn't just punished Evan and Lily, it had given Kelly her life back. The betrayal at that wedding had been meant to crush her. Instead, it became the spark that lit her fight. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not erasing the scars, but wearing them as proof that you survived. And if my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too deserve respect and unconditional love. Sometimes the cruelest betrayal ends up being the very thing that sets you free.